Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm grateful to be here with all of you today. Thank you for coming. The first thing I'd like to do is I have neglected some very important field trip follow-ups. So I would like to shout out Maddie's group. Where's Maddie's group? For being the first group to get in the stream. Excellent, childlike, Yahoo, way to go. And Jose's group, right back there, woohoo, for team building, 12.6 seconds. That's epic. So I apologize that I've neglected those very important shout outs. So there you go. An announcement here about the Sustainability Leadership Minor. So if you're interested in becoming if you're interested in the Sustainability Leadership Minor, this class counts toward that minor. And then if you're thinking about becoming a TA, then you'll have, at the end of your TA experience, you will have gotten 10 credits for being, for including this class, the 3 credits of training, and then the 4 credits of being a TA. And all 10 of those credits count toward the Sustainability Leadership Minor. So when someone asked me about it last week, I thought that I should make a general announcement about exploring that. The Sustainability Leadership Minor is run through Recreation Park and Tourism Management. And so the advisor for this minor and the scheduler are all located in the Ford building. So you can look up more information about this if you're curious about that. So then thinking about being here in this room and what today's class will offer, I'd like you to put your feet flat on the floor. And for our centering today, thinking about being in a posture of awareness and paying attention to your breathing, coming to a place of stillness, except for that movement of your body as it breathes you. Become aware where you are, become aware of where you are and where you have been today. And bring your focus to something that has supported you in these hours between your waking and your arrival here. So what's something that has brought you support? There are loads of different types of support that might come to mind. Consider what you have needed and how those needs have been met. What have you needed and how have those needs been met? Then you'll come to that place of understanding of things that have supported you, people that have supported you. And then focus in on the emotion related to that. What do you feel when you recognize the support that you've received today? What emotions come up? So I'd like you to focus in on it for yourself and take that in, really be in that feeling. And then when you're ready, take a moment and exchange stories of that, what supported you and how you're feeling about that with your neighbor. So what emotions are coming up for you when you think about that support you've experienced? Make sure that when you respond, if you use I language, you'll feel it even more deeply. So who would like to speak to an emotion about this?
I feel a sense of gratitude and um like it's very nice to know that there's people here supporting me, even though I'm so far away from home and like my support system is back home. But here I'm like kind of meeting people that also support me and like go through the same things as me. But yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. So feeling gratitude for the people that support. Lovely. Thank you. Anyone else want to express an emotion? Thanks, Molly.
I guess surprise was my first emotion.
Oh,
Just because I feel like I take a lot of things for granted where
mm,
I'm not like actively thinking about all the, I guess, even like physical things that it takes for my day to be possible.
mhm,
And I kind of just don't acknowledge that at all. So like it just kind of is just what I assume will happen almost.
mhm,
But like when I was kind of thinking through my day, I needed a bed to sleep in, I needed a backpack to carry my stuff, I needed a computer to do my work.
mhm,
I needed my legs to carry me the whole way
mhm,
to my classes and things like that. I needed food to and money to buy the food.
mhm,
So there was a lot of things that I didn't even consider.
mhm.
So I think I was surprised that I didn't acknowledge any of that.
I see. Surprised. Yeah, that you didn't acknowledge it before. There are so many parts of our day, so many things that, when I walk in and the stool isn't here, it's something I take for granted, and the beautiful people next door that loan me one when I need it. So um, sweet surprise. I like that. That's interesting. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Molly, there's someone right back the aisle there. Thank you.
Um, I just got back from outdoor school, so
Sweet.
a lot of the campers' letters
Mm,
have been helping me, like just a lot of the things that they wrote before we left.
yeah. How really cool is that? That's beautiful and surprising opportunity. Yeah. Um, So support. So Henry Matisse is an artist, and he had this beautiful quote: "There are always flowers for those who wish to see them." So thinking about the choices that we have, the idea that gratitude is a choice, surprised by the things that support us, the unexpected gifts that people offer or that the world offers. And so there are always flowers, and I want to say that gratitude is such an opportunity, um, that comes with optimism and joy and all these other really important emotions. So I wanted to start class today this way because we need to keep this in the forefront of our minds to balance some of the hard news that we're hearing in class. There's always optimism. There's always gratitude. There's always joy to be found and seen and experienced. And so keeping this in mind, right? We've been discussing some very challenging topics when we talk about this part of the course. So we've been experiencing sort of what I think of as a world of wounds, where animals are struggling, forests are struggling, plastics in the ocean, people struggling, pesticides, climate chaos, oil, right, mountaintop removal. So all of this is thinking about a world of wounds. And so we've talked about this, the tragedy and the chaos that's coming up around this. And working on your concept maps for week 8, I'm sure brought up even more challenges as you tied all those pieces together. And then we're asked to put yourself in that concept map. Where is it that you fit into all of those pieces? And so that's what this week, we're kind of in part 2 of part 2. And where we're headed, what we're looking at in this part 2 of part 2 is that what we've been looking at, climate chaos, chemicals, the oceans, et cetera, all those things are symptoms, but we haven't really talked about what's the root cause, what's down underneath why these things are happening on our Earth. So these are the effects. These are the direct effects, the symptoms related to the root cause. So today and then the next 2 classes, we're going to be discussing how our actions have been shaped by culture and how those stories are affecting the choices that we make. So today we're going to be digging into that. So I'd like you to take a moment there on page 88 of your journal to write down, why do you think all of this is happening? What are the root causes of what's happening on our planet? This might take a little bit of digging. What root causes do you see? And then when you have your theories, talk to your neighbor about that. Why do you think we're experiencing this chaos? Who would like to speak to this? What are the root cause or root causes of what's happening?
I wrote the greed, selfishness of humans and the Industrial Revolution, as well as the pursuance of domination of nature as like the root causes. So really human strives to dominate and succeed.
Yeah, right. I think you've just summarized what the next 3 classes will be about. Yes, thank you. Other ideas, the topics you didn't mention? Can you move up just a little bit? Jose, there's someone here. Thank you.
So I guess it's related. I wrote down the combustion of fossil fuels and
Mhm.
specifically how big oil has kind of fought against efforts of climate change with things like predatory delay and also, the GCC.
Yeah, right. So there's the persistence of, even though we know that that's not a good idea now, we've persisted with fossil fuels. So that's a big deal too. So we're going to look at some of these today and then carry through to Thursday and then Tuesday of next week as well. So where we'll start today is with the idea, we're going to go back. This is the photo that I showed at the beginning of the oceans class. The idea that this was taken in July of 1969. And at that point in time, there were just shy of 4 billion people on the planet. So 4 billion people at this point when the photo was taken. And this land mass hasn't changed, right? This is exactly the same space as we have today, except now our population has changed significantly. So we're now at 8.2 billion. Actually, Abby, would you show that population counter, please? So this is the current world population. And as we scroll down, you can see births today, 232,000 people have been born today, 106 million people this year, 109 people have died today. So overall, our population growth is 122,000. So, or 56 million for the course of the year. So when we consider that people are living longer, we have amazing medical systems right now that help us to live longer. We've got medications, we know so much more about how the body works. We have habitats that are better for our survival. All of these things have helped with decreasing death rate and increasing birth rate. So overall, though, the growth rate is slowing. So between, say, let's do the example of between 7 and 8 billion, we took about 13 years to do that, between 7 and 8 billion. But between 8 and 9 billion, they're predicting that that's going to take 16 years instead of 13. So population rate is slowing, although it is still growing relatively rapidly. So if you're 19, for example, in your life, 2.66 billion people have been born since you have. That's pretty wacky to think about. So thank you, Abby. May we go back to the other chart for it? Thank you. So see how it's really an exponential growth. When we consider the difference between linear growth, that's when the line goes sort of straight across, not sort of, it goes straight across at a slight increase. It's a steady growth, whereas exponential growth becomes explosive. It goes up and up over time in a way that so that's what's happening with our population. It's also what's happening, this kind of image is from your class text. There's something similar to this in there, where if we look at these, break these down, when we look at world population, that's the one up here in the corner that has that kind of trend. Then we look at where, oh, we have more large dams, and that follows the same curve, and water use, and transportation, and paper production, and fertilizer consumption, you know, the real GDP that somebody spoke to greed and economics. And then also the Earth system trends, you can see as the population makes that exponential curve, that also happens almost parallel with carbon dioxide, happens with marine fish capture that has had a similar curve, shrimp aquaculture, which has gone up very rapidly recently, tropical forest loss, terrestrial biosphere degradation, methane increase. So all of the Earth system trends are moving on that same exponential curve. We are consuming Earth because there's simply more of us on the planet, right? We need to take in more to support the life that is here. So they call this time that we're in, this geological time that we're in, the Anthropocene. So there was the Mesozoic era and all of those leading up to this that were all about what was happening with geology. And now we are now in the Anthropocene, which anthro means man. We are in the time of humans. Humankind is what's shaping our planet these days. So the Anthropocene. Around 1950, the Earth crossed this tipping point. We talked about it in relationship to the ocean. It was when post-World War II production ramped up and consumption slipped into overdrive and everything shifted, right? We, the producers and consumers, moved into this new curve, this exponential growth path fueled by Earth's resources. So it changed so dramatically in that time after World War II because they had ramped up production. And then when everybody came back from the war, they wanted to live the good life. And so people started working more hours and changing their purchasing patterns. So we'll talk more about that with some really interesting stories as we go on. But right now, we'll look at this one. We looked at this the other day. The species extinctions follows that same growth curve. The idea that biodiversity and nature's contributions to people are well, nature is our safety net, but our safety net is stretched almost to a breaking point. So in your lifetime, 120 species or more have become extinct. And so there's more of us. So is that the reason for the dramatic changes? Probably part of it. When we look at what carrying capacity, if you remember back to high school biology, talking about maybe fish in a pond or lily pads living on the surface of the water, when lily pads divide and grow to the point where the pond can't support anymore, then lily pads start to die off. But our population, Earth's carrying capacity, is in that situation now. We're reaching this place of overshoot where our carrying capacity lies somewhere here. We are actually overshooting our numbers. So that's, related to population, but also, as somebody mentioned, that you use the word greed. I'll just for now use the word consumption. The idea that there's less habitable land that can support people, and we're reaching that place. There has been, as of the end of 2024, the number of people displaced in the world has reached 123 million. So forced displacement, they had to flee their homes due to persecution, conflict, violence, human rights violations, disturbing public order. There could be also then the climate crisis. So moving out of their houses, moving from their homes to other places, because the land where they live doesn't support the number of people that are there. So population is definitely an important consideration. I'll say that. And then going on to some of the other explanations that you gave for what's happening on our planet. What does this have to do? How does this connect to the ecological crisis? Take a moment and talk to your neighbor about that. So what do you think? Let's have a little bit of a conversation about this, or I'd love to have you all have a conversation about it. Who would like to speak to this?
It's a big building, so probably uses a lot of electricity, I would imagine. So I'd say that would have something to do with it.
Yep. So the electricity, like running a big building like this, has an impact.
Like the gas used for shipping things there to the stores could have a big impact.
Yep. Yep. Getting the stuff there, probably from all over the world, to this place where people can then consume it. So shipping costs. And by cost, I mean not just money, but what is the oil input or.
I was just thinking about like the idea of like fashion trends and stuff and like how, I don't know, like I was reading this article about how they're like moving faster and faster than like say like 20 years ago. So just like the idea of like consumption and like this looks like a mall. So like specifically with like clothing and like how much people are intaking every year.
Yeah. So what is it that people are buying? Obviously, these days I found some interesting statistics about buying things online, right? It says in the first half of 2025, approximately 59% of consumers prefer shopping online, while 41% still opt for in-store purchases. So significant, but not all-encompassing shift to purchasing online. So this might be slowly becoming outdated, the idea of hanging out at the mall. So there are lots of things, right? The ways that this connects to the ecological crisis. Again, back to the psychology of consumption. So after World War II, consumer spending was encouraged because the US economy needed to rebuild its infrastructure. People splurged on new appliances like washing machines, refrigerators, televisions, cars. And during that time, advertisers have perfected strategies to keep people buying things. A lot of times it's based on exploiting our emotions, such as fears of what would happen if we didn't buy a product, or our need to not miss out on a product, our desire to be more attractive in lots of different ways. So by 1960, Vance Packard wrote his classic book called The Waste Makers. So keep in mind, 1960 was a while back. The lives of most Americans have become so intermeshed with acts of consumption that they tend to gain their feelings of significance in life from these acts of consumption rather than from their achievements, inquiries, personal worth, and service to others. So the idea that leisure time is spent shopping, the act of buying, not really the product itself. It might be the people that you go with. So the hours of work, as I mentioned, in 1950, plus a doubling of consumption per capita, doubling of consumption from 1950 to 1990. So that has significant impact when we think about how we are branded these days. The idea that certain brands mean certain things in our culture. So how does marketing influence our perception of our place within ecosystems? I'll read it. How does marketing influence our perception of our place within ecosystems, the natural world? Does anybody have any thoughts on this that you'd like to share? Immediate.
Well, the point of marketing is to, make yourself think that you need the stuff that you're buying.
Yeah.
And, we already know like the stuff that we like naturally need. So when you add marketing into the equation with like, what you already know, it just makes you think you need a bunch of stuff that you don't.
Yeah, I'm certainly not marketing or bashing marketing. I'm sure that there are some marketing majors in here, and it's really important to understand the psychology of the marketing as the consumer as well as the producer of the marketing. So you are exactly right. Like, marketing is there to help us think that we need things, and then to make choices about how to take them into our lives is our responsibility. So our place within ecosystems, right? It severs the connection to the origins. If I go into McDonald's and buy fries, it's not very often that I think about who's the farmer that made these fries? Like, who grew this potato? How did this come to be? It influences our spatial perception and awareness. So they understand how brains work, right? Reframing relationships. So the idea of greenwashing, making products look like they're environmentally friendly when they aren't at all. But by using we talked about water bottles. When there's a rainbow, or when there's a waterfall, when there's a beautiful river or lake on there, it makes you think that it's a natural product. And so you're more likely to buy it, being attracted to that natural connection. That's called greenwashing, when the product isn't actually natural. It creates artificial need, which is what you're talking about, distorting identity formation. So the idea that what we own shapes who we are. So there's a real separation there. Harvard professor Naomi says, she studies earth science related to history. She says, climate change is an epic market failure. How can we possibly say that the market will fix it if we don't understand the market itself? So where we need to consider is how we as individuals are shaping what's happening, right? It's where we have power in our choices. So thinking about first-person ecology is the name of today's class. First-person ecology. So the understanding about how our actions on Earth make a difference. It's an opportunity to position yourself as an active participant within ecosystems rather than just an observer. So it's an approach to understanding human relationship with nature. It's a first-person look, not being separate from. So centering on how individuals personally experience and interact with nature, including sensory, emotional, and mental dimensions. It focuses on theory and practice, understanding that personal experience is really important in those choices we make, understanding that knowledge is not just an abstract theory, but that you can put all of this into practical use, which is what I get so excited about. And then it encourages ethical engagement. So if you're grounding your choices in personal experience and what you know about the connections to nature, then first-person ecology can provide a stronger motivation for ethical behavior and environmental stewardship. So when we analyze, when we look at our ecological footprint, right, when we think about how much carbon we're using, the land that we're choosing for where we live, how much forest is there, how much cropland and pastures, what's happening in the waterways around us. So as we consider what resources we consume, we're also considering how much waste we're generating and sending back into the environment. So the ecological footprint is what you're going to be doing in your lab this week, considering how you make choices related to this ecology, the place, the demand on the natural capital that you are putting in. It is, however, known, and I imagine that you're already making this connection, that my choices are not going to change 8 billion other people's choices, right? So my effect, the things that I change, are going to be pretty small related to the whole world. that's where sharing what you're doing comes into play, right? So when you find something, when you're doing something that feels important for the world, for the state of the planet, then you share that with other people. So if you find brands that are of clothing that are more sustainable, if you're finding products for the kitchen cleaning that are more sustainable, then you share those. So is there anyone in here that would like to share a step that they are making toward a healthier planet? What choices are you making?
So back home, I work at a chocolate shop, and we talk a lot about like fair trade chocolate, and that's really led me to discover like all the other areas, like just general fair trade and fair trade products, but especially within like things we eat, so like chocolate, coffee. So I've been trying to drink more like fair trade coffee and eat more just general fair trade foods.
Sweet. Can you define fair trade?
Like when they're companies that are working with the farmers directly and paying the farmers directly instead of going through a larger company or a larger outside entity.
So that the person that's creating the resource is getting paid directly for the resource instead of paying the middleman.
Yes.
Thank you. Beautiful example.
Is it on? Okay. Me personally, what I've been doing is I stopped using the plastic water bottles, just like try to limit my, I don't know, footprint, or I just been using reusable water just to help a little bit.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Is there anyone else in the room doing that sort of thing? Reusing water bottle? Reuse? Okay. Some folks doing that. Sweet. Any others? Yeah. There's someone here if there's a microphone up toward the front. Keep coming up. Yeah, thank you.
One thing that I started doing like a year ago that I really like because it's easy is like I'm like bad at finishing my food when I eat out. And then I like realized I was like, wait, I can like just shove a Tupperware in my purse instead of like having to use styrofoam or like whatever they give me. So that's like a really easy thing that I've been doing. And like I'm sure it accumulates a lot over time.
Yeah, it sure does accumulate a lot over time. That's nice. So a reusable container in your purse when you go out to eat so you can take the leftovers home with you. So this is just the start. There are so many different ways and so many different places that to make these kinds of choices. And the idea of which is that when we track, when we pay attention, so first we have to notice, the consumption that we're making. So you can keep a journal even over 24 hours. So noticing all the things that supported you, like we did at the beginning of class, in this sort of way makes us more aware. In consumption journaling, being aware of what you're taking in. If you're getting single-use plastics someplace along the way, if you're consuming the water out of your water bottle, that should go in your journal too, because then you can see that you saved that many water bottles. So consumption journaling, I even have known some people that have collected all of the trash over the course of a month, and then they weigh it and figure out how much trash they are contributing to the cycle and meet up with friends and talk about that. So consumption journaling, keeping track of, and then having conversations with people who differ in experience with the issues we've learned about. So other people, as you go out and you talk to your roommates, other people have other ideas about how to come to an appreciation, come to an awareness of ways to live closer to the land. And then the idea of making those place-based connections to the material. So if you're purchasing that hot cup of something from Starbucks that's made of paper, And then inside, in the layers of paper, so that your beverage doesn't leak out, there's a layer of plastic in between the layers of paper. So where did that come from? How did that cup come to be? Where did the resources come from? So understanding where in nature, and maybe even mapping those connections on the planet. So this is all about how we can take what we've learned so far and start to become aware of the power of choice that we have about the planet. And it's also getting outside of what we think that we know is the right thing to do, being willing to be disturbed, having new ideas presented to us, and then incorporating them. How can we think and act differently? There's a story of a woman who was baking a ham, and before she put the ham in the oven, she cut the ends off and discarded them. And her kid said, why are you doing that? Why do you have to get rid of the ends? And she said, well, that's because my mom always did that. And so the next time she hung out with her mom, she said, Mom, why did you cut off the ends of the ham? And her mom said, well, it's because it wouldn't fit in the pan. I had to cut it to fit. But if the pan is a different size, then you can leave the ham whole. So we learn these patterns and ways of being that we don't sometimes even fully understand. Are we doing something because we've always done it that way, or because someone before us did it that way? So how is it that we can shift and understand our own effects, right? Our own connections. And the big question is, how is it possible to actually increase your well-being while decreasing your footprint? Increase your well-being while decreasing your footprint. It's not too late to make a difference, says a report from the United Nations, but only if we start now at every level, from personal to local to global. Through transformative change, nature can still be conserved, restored, and used sustainably. This is the key to meeting most other global goals. By transformative change, we mean a fundamental system-wide reorganization across technological, economic, and social factors, including paradigms, goals, and values. So how can you make your changes and take your actions and then talk about what you're doing, communicate and educate each other about those opportunities? So this week's Pack-Back question will be open when you get out of class. And the question is, how could the ecological crisis be an opportunity for you? Thank you very much. Have a beautiful day.